This episode is proudly sponsored by HASA, the trusted choice for liquid chlorine. It's better because it offers the highest purity, works instantly, and contains no added CYA. By the bottom feeder, professional-grade battery-powered swimming pool vacuum system, it sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off the bottom feeder with code DVB100. Skimmer, trusted by over 30,000 pool service professionals across North America. Skimmer software helps you save time, grow revenue, and boost your 5-star reviews. Whether you're just starting out or expanding your team, Skimmer's easy-to-use tools and expert support have you covered. Upgrade your business in 2025 with Skimmer. Try Skimmer for 30 days for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about black algae, ways to treat it, ways to identify it. Basically, just a really good prepper here on all things related to black algae and black algae treatment in a swimming pool. Join my coaching program and take your pool service to the next level. Connect with other pool pros in your area, gain valuable knowledge, and transform your business with personalized one-on-one advice from me. With over 36 years of experience, I'm here to help you succeed like never before. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. A good resource if you are interested in all things algae is a book by Rudy Stankiewicz, and you can find this on Amazon. It's called How to Get Rid of Swimming Pool Algae, a really clever title, and one that just describes exactly what's in the book. There's an extensive section on black algae, which is actually a bacteria. And Rudy goes into details of how they analyze it and how they came up with just some more specifics on black algae, which is really an unknown thing in the pool industry. There's a lot of myths surrounding it and a lot of different ideas of where it comes from. The one that was propagated widely here in California was that it came from the ocean. People that went to the ocean and went to their pool with the same bathing suits, brought the black algae to the pool. Who knows exactly the actual source of it? In his book, he talks about how there's differences in regions. Different regions of the country have different black algae. Basically, the black algae gets in the pool, and it can be spread throughout the entire pool pretty rapidly by lack of maintenance. So there's some things you need to do once there's black algae in the pool. I'll go over that in a moment. But as far as the origin, it's something that's somewhat of a mystery of why it enters certain pools and not other pools. I get asked this a lot. This question is kind of important and is asked, should I use the same brush and leaf rake in a pool with black algae in my other pools? Can I spread it from one pool to another? And there are some instances where this could be the case where the black algae has gone from one pool to another. There's really no other evidence beyond the fact that someone used the same pool brush in one pool and the black algae appeared in another pool. So beyond like a major coincidence, I would say yes, you can probably spread black algae on your equipment, although it dies pretty rapidly once it's no longer wet from what I've seen in pools that I've drained and treated. However, it's better to be cautious. It's really easy, and the solution is very simple. Just buy a stainless steel brush, maybe a regular brush, and a leaf rake for the customer that has black algae, and leave it at that customer's account. That way, there's no need for you to be switching equipment or being worried about contaminating stuff in your truck. Just leave that there. And I'm making it sound like black algae is like the plague or something, and I don't think that's the case. But we should be cautious, and you don't want to spread the black algae from one pool to another. Now, one way a black algae outbreak happens, and this is pretty common across the board in all of the pools that I've had with black algae, one thing takes place that causes a black algae to form, and that's the chlorine in the pool zeroing out. When you have no chlorine in the pool, the black algae can grow there. And it's one of those things where it's really a mystery and a head scratcher sometimes. I had this pool that I had no reason to suspect there would be black algae. It was a fairly new build. The pool was built. It was there's really nothing that I could think of that would cause the black algae to form in there. Yet the chlorine had zeroed out after they had a party, and I noticed these little tiny dots in the pool. I knew what they were right away because I know how to identify black algae. Now here in California, most of our black algae, unlike the thumbnail for this podcast where it's like everywhere and it's on the walls, that's kind of exaggerating, but it goes everywhere in the pool. Usually in some areas you'll see a huge amount of black algae and it looks more like someone dropped, spilled tar in the pool. But here in California, it tends to be little dots all over the pool. So imagine like the size of an eraser, and it's just all over the floor, sometimes on the wall, sometimes as big as a quarter or a silver dollar. But usually a quarter size is probably as big as they get here. And typically the black algae that I see in my area are just these dots all over the pool, kind of like acne all over the pool, sometimes in the deep end only, sometimes in the shallow end, sometimes on the walls only. It's one of these things where you can't really figure it out, but you do have to treat it and you have to be aggressive. So if the pool has black algae and it has a history of black algae, you never want that pool to run out of chlorine. So what you want to sell the customer is a saltwater generator. That way it's producing chlorine all the time. Or if you're on top of things, just make sure that pool has a chlorine level of 5 to 10 parts per million every week and never drops below that. And I've found this to be a really successful way to prevent black algae from forming in a lot of pools. Another area where black algae tends to form is if the plaster is compromised. So if there's cracks in the plaster, chips, any areas where the algae can get in there and get in there really good, black algae will form in the pool. So keep in mind that if you take over an account that has chipped plaster or cracked plaster, there's a good chance that regular algae, but more specifically black algae, can form in that pool. So just be aware that there are certain pool types where this is more prevalent. I've had black algae in fiberglass pools in California here. So there really isn't a lot of immunity to the surface type, except vinyl probably. But PebbleTech, plaster, and fiberglass pools can develop black algae. Now, how do you treat the black algae? Well, there's a couple of ways you can treat the black algae that are successful. And one way is with a very high level of chlorine, and the other way is with a copper algicide. Now, the copper algicide that I recommend is found in a PolarX unit. So PolarX is a EPA certified algicide, but it's basically an easy to use device because it's in a plastic container with an anode, and then there's the minerals in there, and one of the minerals is copper, but it's chelated, which means that it's suspended in the water. So unless you already have an existing copper level, which you probably don't if you have black algae in the pool, by the way, then you can use the PolarX, and the copper in the PolarX will eventually eliminate the black algae. Now this may take a month, 6 weeks, up to 8 weeks I've seen it, to where it starts to take care of the black algae. In the meantime, you would want to keep elevated chlorine levels in the pool to prevent the black algae from spreading. While the PolarX unit is working, you want to use a stainless steel brush in a plaster and PebbleTech pool, not a fiberglass pool, to brush the heads off the black algae. This also helps kill the black algae. And I recommend a 5 or 6 inch stainless steel algae brush to brush the heads off. I've had really good success, by the way, as well with a device called a stain eraser. This attaches to your pool pole. It has a kind of sandpaper-ishy, kind of rubbery feel to it. And I've had really good success knocking heads of black algae off with this device. Although it is slow, and if you have 100 heads to knock off, it's going to take you forever. So the stainless steel brush is good. And if you find that you can't knock the head off with that, try using the stain eraser. And I've, again, had really good success getting the black algae head off. With that and the raised chlorine level and the PolarX unit in there, you're going to have pretty good success. You can also speed this thing up very rapidly with a product called HASA Algaban. It's a trichlorogranular, and you can use this in the pool carefully. Now, I would recommend this only for white plaster pools, usually older. I wouldn't recommend it for colored plaster pools. Unless they're older with a lot of modeling, then you can use the granular trichlor, no problem. And I would not recommend it in a fiberglass pool because you could burn the surface very easily. So basically, you're going to sprinkle it in the pool a little bit goes a long way, and you don't want to pile any of this piling up on the slope of the pool. So if the granular trichlor piles up on the slope of the pool, it's going to burn the plaster and give it a brown stain. So you'll get rid of the black algae, and then you're going to have a brown stain on the plaster. Not a good exchange there. I would also recommend wearing a mask and not doing this treatment on a windy day, because the dust and the fumes are going to blow back at you and it's going to cause you to get itchy and get a rash. And the fumes are also pretty toxic. So if you have some experience using this, of course, you would want to develop experience by using it on older pools. So I really perfected my method with some really old pools over the years on my route. These pools have gigantic chips in the plaster, like 5 or 6 inches in diameter. They're cracked, they're stained, they're really ugly looking. And so just take some of this trichlor and practice on that pool. See how much of it will actually burn the plaster. See how much of it will take off black algae. And yes, these pools had black algae, by the way. So I could experiment with these pools and not really worry about it, because pretty much the surface was ruined already. And if I burned it, it's not a big deal. But burning a new plaster, or maybe a pool that looks pristine and you burn an area of it with the algae, not a good thing. So you don't want to leave brown burn marks on the plaster with this product. So practice sprinkling on areas, and you just need a little bit to land on the black algae head, or around the black algae head is sufficient as well. I've also used Cal Hypo pretty successfully in a PebbleTech pool with black algae. I didn't really want to use the trichlor because I didn't want to burn the PebbleTech surface. It was a lighter colored PebbleTech, and I figured the trichlor would burn it, so I decided to use Cal Hypo. So I put about 4 pounds of it. I turned off the pool. Same thing with the algae treatment. You turn the pool off so that everything settles on the bottom. Turn off any cleaners in the pool so that's not going to pick up the trichlor granular. So with the PebbleTech pool, I've done this with the Cal Hypo. I turn off the pool and I sprinkle it in and make sure that it lands on the black algae heads after I brush them off again with the steel brush and with the stain eraser. And I've had really good results with the Cal Hypo sitting on top of the black algae heads. Now this works better in colder water, where the Cal Hypo doesn't dissolve rapidly. In really hot water, 80 degrees or so, the Cal Hypo will dissolve faster. So I would recommend doing this when it's cooler. And of course, near the end of the season or the beginning of the season is perfect. And Cal Hypo has a pretty good effect on the black algae if you brush the heads off of them. What about draining a pool and doing a chlorine wash? I've done that as well. I had a PebbleTech pool that had so much black algae that I couldn't do the topical treatment effectively. Plus, it needed to be acid washed because it was in pretty bad shape. So I drained the pool and I did a chlorine wash. So you don't want to use pure chlorine in a lot of cases because that could cause other problems with not diluting the chlorine. So maybe use a 1 part chlorine, 3 part water solution, and just spray it on the pool, or use a watering can and pour it over the pool from the top to the bottom. And you'll be amazed of how this kills the black algae. Now there's been some instances in my group where it's been a commercial pool, has black algae, they drained it and did a chlorine wash, but it didn't really take the black algae out. So they had to do a few more things. There's a few more steps. They tried power washing it, took some of the black algae heads off. And the last step, if you have really aggressive black algae, you've did a chlorine wash, you've power washed the surface, you may want to get a power sander and sand off the tops or the heads of the black algae. And this will be an effective way to do it, because you have to really you have to take the head off the black algae in order to really kill it with the chlorine method. Again, I mentioned that copper and copper algicide will eventually eliminate the black algae or reduce it. And it is effective, but it does take a very long time for it to be effective. And a lot of customers aren't going to be patient enough for you to use just copper alone to remove the black algae. At least in my area, they're very impatient. When they see black algae, it looks very unsightly, and it's something that they want you to rectify right away. So try the granular trichlor in the certain pools I mentioned, and try the Cal Hypo. If you're leery of using the granular trichlor, Cal Hypo in cooler water has a similar effect, not quite as good as the granular trichlor because that stays on the bottom a lot longer, but I've had success doing multiple cal hypo treatments on a pool with black algae, which means every week for a 2 or 3 week period, I'm dumping cal hypo in that pool, brushing the black algae aggressively and letting it land on there. Now for the sides of the pool, you may be wondering, well, how can you get chemicals on the sides of the pool? Good question. You really can't, because if you try to put granular trichlor on the side of the pool, it's just going to run down to the slope, and it's going to sit on the slope, and it's going to burn the surface, which you don't want it to do. There's various tablet holders out there. The Pentair makes one, the Algae tablet holder, and these are 3-inch chlorine tablet holders. There's a few more on Amazon you can find. They're pretty good. Nothing is going to be great because they're really just not made to be great. I suppose I can have my son 3D print a really good one. I bet he can make one that's much more effective than the ones that are out there on the market today. Or maybe I'll have him do that after this. But basically, you put a 3-inch trichlor tablet in these holders, you attach it to your pool pole, and then you rub the tablet on the black algae. Now, by the way, this is highly effective as well for black algae in a newer pool. Let's say you have a new pool, it's a colored plaster pool, you don't want to put the granular trichlor in, no problem. Just get one of these tablet holders, put the 3-inch chlorine tablet in there, and then leave a little streak on top of the black algae. This is very time-consuming stuff, so you're definitely going to charge the customer for the black algae treatment, because for you to take a tablet, first for you to take a steel brush and maybe the stain eraser and knock all the heads off of, let's say there's 50 or 60 heads on the bottom of the pool, and then take a 3-inch trichlor tablet and then rub it on those heads you brushed off. Now the heads are going to be like a light gray color now since you brushed off the black of it. So you just take that trichlor tablet, you just leave a little white streak on it. White streak, until you have a little white streak all over the black algae heads. And that's an effective way of also killing the black algae on the floor, but especially on the walls of the pool. Typically, I'm spending 30 minutes to an hour doing a black algae treatment, and you're going to get paid for that because it's very time consuming. And I use various methods. I'll use the granular trichlor, I'll use cal hypo, I'll use the 3-inch chlorine tablet on the black algae on the walls and bottom, and I'll use a Pool RX to give myself some insurance after I'm done to prevent the black algae from coming back. And I'll keep the chlorine level between 5 and 10 parts per million to keep that black algae from coming back in the pool. You can treat it effectively, it's time consuming, and using a combination of really high chlorine. And by the way, this granular trichlor, when you put it in there, let's say you add 5 pounds. Typically, if the black algae outbreak is really bad, I'm adding up to 10 pounds of it in there. You're raising the chlorine level to a pretty astronomical level, which is good because that's going to kill the black algae, but it's bad if someone goes in the pool. So make sure you close the pool down with notes, turn off the power, text the customer, let them know they can't use the pool for a few days until the chlorine level drops back down. You're treating the black algae, and no one should be swimming in the pool. Very important to let the customer know that you're doing this black algae treatment, and they should not be going in the pool. I've had dogs go in right after. I don't think they're affected by the high chlorine. It's kind of weird. They'll drink the water right after the treatment. It's kind of strange, but I think they have a high tolerance for it. But certainly you don't want people swimming in the pool when the chlorine level is at 50 parts per million. Probably would not be ideal. And so that's just a caution there. Hope you stayed for the whole podcast because I went over a lot and this is all tied together and it's something that the process is a complete process from start to finish. The raising the chlorine level, brushing the heads off, and using the copper and keeping the chlorine level elevated. As time goes on, you're going to prevent that black algae from coming back to the pool. And I can guarantee you're going to have really good success at preventing a return of the black algae if you use the Pool RX unit, raise the chlorine level up to high levels and keep them there, and never let that pool zero out with chlorine. The black algae will not come back. I've had pools for many years that never had black algae return if I kept this regimen, and I would assume the black algae is just gone out of the pool at that point, but you never know, especially if the pool has plaster that's compromised. If you're looking for other podcasts I've recorded, you can find those on my website, somebodyforlearning.com. There's a podcast icon, and you'll be a menu of other podcasts I have recorded. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. the bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.